Arcane might end at the end of Season 2, but fear not, Riot Games have said that they've been investing a lot of resources in the future Runeterra projects within the same world of Arcane. We know there is a live action and a movie coming up, so I have a lot to talk about in the future. The thing about League of Legends is that recently less and less new players have been starting the game. Especially with the success of Arcane, investing in their media production is great for branding and introducing new players to the game. I know that I quit my 2-year soberness after watching Arcane, so it's clearly working. The lore behind Runeterra is vast and very rich, so there's a lot of possibilities to explore the other regions. So let's talk about the future of the Arcane cinematic universe. I do want to preface that I'm not the biggest lore nerd, but I do know a lot about Arcane, so maybe that'll make up for my lack of knowledge. Who knows? When it comes to making a new storyline for a new region, there are 4 important factors to consider. First is the overall throughline of the series, the Arcane. Originally, Arcane was supposed to be an anthology for the universe, moving on to different regions after every few seasons. Naming the show Arcane is important as all regions and characters have a very different relationship to the magic itself. This is going to continue, but the magic in League of Legends is super complex. Each region uses it and regards it in its own way. A large reason why we started in Piltover and Zaun is because the Arcane played the simplest role here just to introduce us to it. The Arcane itself is very linear in nature, being transposed as technology with static uses. Now, as they expand on the universe, we will be introduced to more and more complex forms of magic. If the next region has everyone be mages using all sorts of different techniques, that will be very intimidating to new viewers when interacting with the world. Also, in terms of stakes, we don't want to go from a place filled with the craziest magic blowing up whole islands just to move on to the next country where everyone is a farmer. A sense of magic progression is important for maintaining the overall depth of magic alongside viewer expectations. So I think the next few regions we'll be seeing will be less magically rich. Another important factor is distinction. Look at One Piece being heralded as one of the best built worlds in fiction. One method that does this is by having great contrasts between the islands, going from a blizzard winter island immediately into a desert Sahara. Not only does this make the world feel very wild and diverse, it also refreshes the audience's mindset coming into a new region while giving us a sense of romantic wonder stepping into a completely different setting. Thirdly, each location should have a strong focus of the story. This is really irrelevant as the Arcane creators are amazing and did so much with the simple Piltover Zaun story in the game lore, so I'm not too worried about that. But it's still important to mention. Finally, the world needs a progressive through line. Though Magic and the Arcane is the starting connection between the different regions, we also want the ending of all these series to be building on top of each other towards a greater connected climax, similar to the Avengers Infinity Saga. Piltover does that by being geographically in the center of the world as a trade hub and inventing the premier technology that shakes up the current balance of the world with mages and non-mages with Hextech. Overall, choosing Piltover as the starting point in Arcane was the best possible start they could have done with a primitive relationship with magic, a very familiar setting compared to the real world with Parisian architecture, an incredibly strong storyline between 2 cities and sisters, and laying out the groundwork to build upon itself into a beautiful, vast world of Runeterra. Now let's go through the regions from least likely to most likely to be covered in the near future. Bandle City is going to be super cringe. Basically, everyone there is a Yordle-like Heimerdinger, and that already makes my head hurt. I don't see any real conflict they could do, or specific character storylines that would be interesting, and all the characters being immortal means that there are no stakes. World building wise, I don't think normal people can even enter, so it's just gonna be a furry circle jerk with funny shenanigans. I don't think they'll ever have a dedicated series to Bandle City, and if they do, I will do a face review and take a shit live on stream after eating 5 laxatives. I'm not even gonna count this as an actual region. The least likely region for us to be going to is going to be the Shadow Isles. The Shadow Isles are a wasteland filled with ghosts and souls, and I think it's super weird with ghostly spirits, and it's way too hard to grasp our mind around. The magic is super complex, and the possibility of reviving people and bringing back souls would be super messy in the overall world. Especially introduced this early, as tension would be immediately diffused as we know that characters' souls are still out there and death is not final. The setting is very different from Piltover, but also it's a lot of the same with just misty, rocky shores. There also isn't a good central storyline they could choose. I know people say LeBlanc, a Noxian sorceress, is building up an army to fight them, so that gives even more credence that the Shadow Isles is an endgame level threat, so as of now, it's way too early for us to be seeing this place. This sentiment goes similarly for the Void. The Void is crazy with primordial beings and slowly taking over Runeterra, so it's probably going to be another endgame after Shadow Isles. But the world itself is also as different as the Shadow Isles, and I think it gets stale pretty fast. It's just more purple and more bugs everywhere. The magic is insane with Vel'Koz creating the world or some shit. In terms of main storyline, it might actually be good starring Kaisa as a tiny girl kidnapped into the Void, but it might be boring following one person fight Void demons with little complexity. Again, the Void is more suited as an endgame threat where the whole world unites to combat its influence, so I don't think we'll be getting a dedicated series to it. Now, Ixtal would be cool with elemental magic and lush jungle, but the biggest problem is that there are negative champions in this area, and thus it's hard to pinpoint the exact storyline. It's also not super engaged with the greater world, so I don't even know if Arcane will ever cover this, to be honest. I do really like the jungle and tribal aesthetic of it, so if it's on our streams, it would look amazing. Alright, moving on to the normal regions of Runeterra, I might get hate for this, but the least likely country to be covered is Ionia. I see a lot of comments saying that they want Ionia to be covered next because their favorite champion is from there, and it's same for me. I love Rakan, and I want to see Rakan, but I do have a good reason to put it this low. Ionia has a very rich relationship with magic, so that makes diving into this new setting super jarring. Ionia is no doubt incredibly beautiful, and its setting would probably be the best to do out of all other regions, just on the visual level. Storylines could be Ahri finding redemption, Yasuo's lone journey, Shen and Nikali's mentorship, and the Vestayan rebellion. But we do know of a major event that happens in Ionia, that being the Noxan invasion. For that, I think a 2-ish season of Ionia would be fitting, building on individual storylines in Season 1 before an outside invader comes in to stir things up in the chaos. However, that would mean we would need to develop Noxus first to get to know this threat, especially coming off after Piltover, as Noxus as just a shared enemy of everyone is going to be pretty flat if we don't know anything about them. For Piltover and Zaun, the main conflict is going to be the cities at the end, so Noxus isn't going to be the major focal point, but against Ionia, they are going to be the major antagonists, so they have to get development first if they want to make the conflict interesting. Also, Piltover and Ionia might be treading on covered ground with fighting against Noxus again, so for these reasons, I don't think Ionia will be the next region covered. Now on to the likely candidates. Mount Targon would be sick. It's this huge magical mountain where people can climb to the top to get immortality and meet the Celestials that created the world or something like that. The setting is cool, and I know they have two factions, the Sun and the Moon Core, and they fight each other for raisins. Magic might be a little iffy if we're going to meet the literal creators of the world, and unfortunately the two sides hating on each other has been done before, so I think we might need a little break. The Diana and Leona storyline would be epic as two gay lovers that can't be together, Romeo and Juliet style. Seeing Pantheon would also be sick, and introducing the method for normal humans to get magic and immortality and being possessed by aspects that created this world would be amazing for the overall world of Runeterra. But just because the magic is a little too powerful, and how they might rehash the two faction conflict again makes me think that Targon isn't that likely. Now, I see a lot of people saying Noxus, but I don't actually think they would do that. The level of magic is pretty average there, as there are Noxan mages, and we will probably see a Noxan sorcerer in Piltover soon, so it's a pretty easy layup. Conflict is strong as we can follow Mbessa and Swain and Darius' warmongering. The storyline can also be good, starting off with the Noxan internal conflicts between generals until the country unites as one under Swain. Then it'd also be great for the overall world building, as Noxus would slowly branch out to start conquering the world at the end of its Season 2. And it would set up the other regions ready to be explored, just like Ionia and Demacia. The only problem I have with this is being different. We've already seen Mbessa, and we are going to see more Noxans in Arcane, and continuing their conflict would be easy, but it wouldn't differentiate themselves from the Piltover story. I think that the creators of Arcane want to dive headfirst into a completely different region to show that they can do a wildly contrasting region with no ties to the Arcane Piltover saga, and still have it stand on its own to prove that these regions of the world are still worth telling, even if it doesn't have characters we already care about. If you want genuine world building in this world, then we should cut to a completely unexplored part of the world rather than the journey of someone we're already familiar with. Now, I would really like a show about Demacia. Demacia hates and prosecutes mages, so it would be a good region to carry into, as it also has little relationship with magic, similar to Piltover, but that would be due to the willful purging of magically attuned individuals, so the presence and weight of magic will still be felt greatly no matter where we are. The setting might be too similar to Piltover with a lot of white and golds, but we will also have lush farmlands and country fields to explore. Storyline is strong, with Lux hiding her magic from the royal chambers of Demacia, and seeing Silas and his mage rebellion within Noxus is another fantastic complex conflict. World building would be natural as we get introduced to anti-magic stone that can also be harnessed to combat mages. Only problem is that they fight with Noxus a lot, so again, might be too similar to Piltover. Now, we are getting into the top 3, and I think we will see all of these regions be explored in the very near future. I might bet my entire channel on it, to be honest. All 3 of these regions satisfy my conditions for having a realistic and worthwhile extension of the universe we already know. Number 3 is Shurima, cause I love Shurima lore. Now, I think we will get a prequel movie about Shurima because Shurima used to be the capital of Runeterra, then a big disaster happened that set up the world as we know it. The Azir Zereth storyline has been my favorite champion lore, and watching their development on the big screen would be a dream. Their storyline is pretty short though, so that's why I say it's perfect for a movie. Magic is complex, but it's easy to understand with a giant sun disk that can grant people immortality, and also the Acathian nation opening up a giant portal into the void is important. For those who know what ultimately happened to Azir and Xerath and how important their downfall is for setting up the major plot points of the present, combined with a modern second coming of the Shuriman nation, it's going to be very necessary to introduce us to the context that helps set up the modern world. The setting is like Egypt and also deserts, and a small critique is that it might be too yellow coming right off of Piltover. But again, I think as a movie spin-off, Shurima is the way to go. Number 2, Freyord. It would actually be so hype. Riot Games hinted at the possibility of a live action, and it's sad to see why everyone's so against the idea. I think it's fine giving them our trust, as they earned it with Arcane, even though I think the live action team won't necessarily be the Arcane team. But I do get that sentiment. The words video game and adaptation doesn't really have a good track record, and throwing the words live action into the mix just sounds like foreskin cheese. But the League of Legends animatics have been super realistic, so having live action would feel grounded and not too jarring. So that's why I think the Freyord would be the best place to do so. Part of the reason why Game of Thrones is a successful adaptation is because having everyone just be in snow makes the set pieces easy to do with minimal CGI and a cheap budget, as everything is just basically white. Magic-wise, it's pretty minor development on what we already know with ice magic and goddesses, but it's not super grand like in Targon or Shurima. Story-wise, I'm not too familiar with the champions, but I know a lot of them exist, unlike Ixtal. Only problem I see is that Silas is important to Freyord as he uses them for his Demacian invasion. But the Freyord isn't super necessary as a setting to that plot point, so it could be done off-screen in a different series, while the live-action series gives the Freyord its focus. Setting-wise, it's beautiful with rocky cliffs, glaciers, and snow, and I already love the Viking aesthetic, as it would be a great contrast to Piltover steampunk. Now for world building I mentioned earlier, it sets them up for Silas' future plans, so yeah, we have a real good chance of seeing the live-action Freyord soon. My number 1 pick for the next Arcane region is super biased, but it's gonna have to be Bilgewater. I love the pirate aesthetic as a big fan of One Piece and Assassin's Creed Black Flag. The way pirates are portrayed in media, such as Pirates of the Caribbean, are super lighthearted most of the time, lacking the grittiness and cutthroatness of actual pirates. I know Arcane with their darker tone would do it justice and make it truly revolutionary for the pirate genre. There's also a minuscule amount of magic within Bilgewater with folktales and ghosts, but overall it's the most grounded, least arcane-rich area second to Piltover, so I think it'd be a fantastic progression. People might think that the setting would be too similar to Zaun with gangs and misty atmosphere, but just make the ambient color blue instead of green, with the buildings shorter so it's not as industrial as the modern Zaun, and I think it'd be different enough. Story-wise, Misfortune and her plot of dethroning Gangplank to avenge her parents is perfect and already super powerful. So adding the complexity the Arcane creators would throw at it would make this a heart-wrenching story guaranteed. And for world building, Bilgewater is perfect. It's a major smuggling hub, and the thing is in modern Runeterra, Hextech is commonplace and all countries have access to it. So on that front, Bilgewater would be the perfect way to pirate and spread Hextech technology and knowledge to every corner of the world, following up on Piltover's story with Hextech's creation. I would kill to see an animated Bilgewater, and it seems like the natural next location for the Arcane universe. So that's all from me today. Thank you guys for watching, and I really want to hear your thoughts. What are you excited for? What do you think's gonna be next? You think I'm wrong? You think I'm dumb? You think I'm stupid? Tell that to me below. And yeah, the future of Arcane looks bright. My channel is probably gonna be around for a long time, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Yeah? Bye-bye.